We have the Pisces new moon on March 17th. Time of chaos or transformation, or maybe both. Some real potential for danger with a Mars-Saturn conjunction. Debilitated Mercury and exalted Venus. Plus an overview of how this will influence Donald Trump and the chaos that could result. Okay, so talking about the Pisces cycle of 2018, the new moon in Pisces happens on March 17th, and it's a time where we are connecting with that Pisces lesson, which has to do with a sort of metaphysical connection to the sort of cosmos, the part of us that's not really of this world. It's where we graduate from the sort of collective illusion that one day there's going to be this utopia on Earth and we'll all get along. That could happen, but that's the kind of dream of Aquarius. Usually human beings have this utopic vision of the world, like one day, oh, if the world could just be this way and I'm of the world and everybody's happy and we're all this wonderful thing. Pisces is where we actually go, you know what, that would be great, but I'm actually not of this world. The world's the way it is. I can make peace with the world and the ups and downs and the wins and losses of the culture of the world, which is Aquarius, and realize that my soul is eternal. I'm in the world, but not of the world. So Pisces is where we understand that, but it also makes us then perhaps disconnect from the world of all the problems and the difficulties, because the world is painful. And Pisces, that pain can be so urgent and so great that we just want to block it out and escape into fantasy land, something not of this world. And this is why, easiest ways to escape into those things have to do with, drugs and alcohol and other ways of escaping. And so a big lesson of Pisces is to integrate the opposite energy of Virgo, which is to stay involved in the details. So we have this new moon in Pisces. This is why the opposite point, the midway point in any new moon cycle, when sun and moon come together, is the full moon. That's where we integrate the opposite. So this integration between the surrender and the metaphysical oneness of Pisces needs to be harmonized with Virgo, which is the opposite extreme, all the unpleasant tasks of the world and being of service in Virgo, being in the world. So the next 30 days, it could be a time of escapism with a lot of metaphysical promise, though. The promise is literally connecting to something truthful beyond the world. So rather than escaping into that, we can escape into the truth of who we really are. Rather than escaping from some unpleasant reality where we feel powerless because the world is such a mess, we escape into the truth of who we really are. Yeah, the world is a mess. It's always been a mess, but I'm not of the world. I'm in the world, but not of the world. So that's the highest promise of Pisces. Now, this also makes for a very romantic kind of nature. Venus is exalted in Pisces. Venus is the planet of love and beauty and harmony with other people, and it has this exaltation point in Pisces, again, which shows where we're supposed to elevate our sense of beauty and joy to something beyond the earth. Instead, what we tend to do is project some fantasy onto partners and onto other people, which ultimately, hopefully, connects us to God. Again, this is what Pisces can do. Venus is exalted there because Venus is our relationships with other people, and we're supposed to see people as divine beings. And if we do see people as divine beings, we're not disappointed and crushed by their human failings, which is typically what happens. So I say this because Venus is also in Pisces. At the beginning of this new moon, we're also dealing with an exalted Venus, so it could be very, kind of wondrous and magical, your hopes and in your relationships with other people. But it can also be where you are sort of aware that people disappoint you, and you're noticing where your relationship and your interactions with, let's say, other intimate people are falling short of what you want. But again, check your own fantasy projections as well, and make sure that you're not just, sort of being immature and faulting people for not being this, perfect God standard. You're also not. You're also disappointing to them. Okay? Maybe you just notice where they disappoint you, and then don't look at how you act as well. So aside from all of that, it's a time of creativity, and certainly artists and musicians and creative people also can run a lot of Pisces energy, because again, creativity and beauty and joy is also where we escape from the mundane into the creative, but it's in a more secular way, or in a more artistic way, rather than a spiritual way that's transcendent. So we also have Mercury debilitated. We have the Venus exalted and the Mercury debilitated. Mercury debilitated is where we tend to get the story confused. The reason Mercury is debilitated in Pisces is because all of the story kind of blends together. As I just said, Mercury is the ruler of Virgo, and it's exalted in Virgo, where there's precision and every detail is precise. And we enjoy it. We enjoy, all those details and working through them without taking them seriously or being really attached. So Mercury is debilitated in Pisces, where all those details just kind of blur together and everything gets really swirly and and we're not focusing. So again, you have to understand Mercury is the speaker, so it shows where you might misspeak, say the wrong words, because you're getting the concepts mixed up. And it's also where you might lie, not tell the truth. Or, of course, others are lying and not telling the truth. Again, lying is a harsh word. It implies intent. It's not always intentional. Sometimes it is when people are liars and they intentionally lie. But sometimes people lie just because they don't realize that they're delusional, frankly. We lie to ourselves first, and then we justify lying to other people. Well, I told you that because if I told you the truth, then you would say this. Well, okay, it doesn't matter why. It's still a lie. If you're telling me something just to get what you want, that's called manipulation. So when people do this, again, what happens is if somebody catches you lying and somebody catches you telling them something because if you told them the truth, they wouldn't get what they want, well, you're going to feel manipulated and you're not going to trust the person. So again, we're always evaluating people's words based on this. Are you telling me the truth? Is this real? Can I trust what you're saying? So when Mercury's in Pisces, there can be a tendency to not understand the story straight or get it confused, get all these things confused. Well, this is what happened, but I'm not sure if I should say that, because if I say that, it might upset them. All right, that's a different thing, but if it's something like, well, if I say that, then they're going to get mad and they're not going to like me, or, again, I'm not going to get what I want, then it becomes sort of amoral. And again, this is why Mercury also is one of these planets that's a little bit amoral, because it's about trying to improve something and trying to get something. And sometimes Mercury isn't trying to do what's correct, it's trying to facilitate something and have it work. It's like where we recognize the details. Well, I realize now that if I say this to you, I'm not going to succeed. I'm not going to get what I want, so I'll say this. And not feel in conflict around it. Some parts of us feel in conflict, other parts of us don't. So this is why Mercury is neutral. Now I can hear it already, the question, well, Mercury's debilitated, but it's with exalted Venus, so isn't it like it's exalted? No, nothing is like anything else. I talked about both things separate because they're both there. When Mercury's debilitated, it gets that story kind of confused. The fact that it's joined an exalted Venus means that there's a powerful planet, a planet in high dignity also there, so we're less likely to misuse that energy. So if we get in a situation where we might, in this case, be tempted to say something that's not true or whatever, exalted Venus is there bringing this devotion and this awareness, and we would have a conscience that would step in and go, wait a minute, you shouldn't say that. You should try to be loving toward the other person, because that's what exalted Venus does. It brings the wisdom. So get out of the idea that anything cancels anything else. I know astrologers say this kind of stuff all the time. It's just not true. Both energies are there, and they're both active. And by the way, Mercury is going to be in Pisces until early May. It's going to go retrograde as well. So we have to get used to Mercury being in Pisces for a while. So, it's in Purvabhadra Nakshatra, which is related to Lord Shiva, and it's one of the, the deity is one of the Rudras called Aja Ekapad, which means the one-footed goat. And it's related to lightning that comes down and strikes us, like one of the, what are called Rudras, which are the attendants of Lord Shiva that are here to help the soul become liberated. It's the first of the scorching pair, symbolized by like a funeral cot. And so it's where the soul is starting to assert and the ego is dying. Okay, so this is the bridge between Aquarius and Pisces. And again, just going to say it, pure sidereal Vedic astrology. Vedic astrology does not use tropical signs. Forget it. It's not true. You see it very clearly in every nakshatra transition. Purvabhadra is literally the nakshatra that bridges that quality of Aquarius I was just talking about, which is the kind of collective illusion that one day the world will be in this utopic place and I'm going to do this, and we kind of see that for what it is and leave it behind. And the last pada, the last section of Purvabhadra, is in Pisces, where we have that lightning strike that says, yes, that's right, I'm not of this world. Here I thought I was trying to make the world a better place, and now, bam, I get this lightning that strikes me in the early part of Pisces that says, oh, that's right, wow, I'm in this world but not of this world. So again, purely sidereal, forget the tropical zodiac stuff. There's just no basis for it. You see it clearly, especially in these transitional nakshatras. You see it in all of them, but you see it here, so I just make sure to point it out now. And so Purvabhadra, Aja Ekapad, the lightning that comes down and strikes us and shows us this glimpse of truth. But it can be fanatical. It has a fanatical quality to it, so we need to be careful of fanaticism, fanatical leaders, and all kinds of stuff right now, which is very important. Unfortunately, we've seen recently, since Mars and Saturn joined in Sagittarius, especially since Mars went into Sagittarius about a week ago, we've seen a lot of chaos. We've seen a lot of power grabs. He was the premier of China, or the president of China, now basically declared himself a king. Basically, he's now emperor for life or something. This is huge. I mean, we're not even reporting it here in the US, but he's now become a full-on, dictator, the president of China. They had elections before in some kind of system where they would elect. Of course, Putin has been a dictator for decades, and when we say dictator, it means he's in charge. That's it. He's concentrated power around himself. In China now, the leader is basically a dictator. Of course, we have the Kim Jong-un concentrating more of his power. Of course, the President of the United States, well, frankly, he seems to love to be a dictator. He even joked about it last weekend. Again, it should make people's blood run cold. President Trump commented on what happened in China and said, oh, he's a great guy. He just became kind of, like emperor for life. We should try that here. And everybody in the audience laughed. Like, that's a joke? So this Mars-Saturn is dangerous for the next month, particularly around the end of March into early April, when Mars and Saturn get really close in Sagittarius. We could see some military action. And by the way, especially I'm going to talk about, I'll just mention President Trump's chart, especially now, because we've seen where the last couple months he's been very much all this chaos and transition in his chart, or in his life, shown by his chart. And I made the predictions correctly. I'm going to state it, not just to brag, but because we can see how astrology works. I said before the first eclipse started, before the lunar eclipse in his 12th house that went over his two relationship planets, Venus and Saturn, I said his relationships with women are going to blow up in the next month or so. By the next month, this whole Stormy Daniels thing had blown sky high. At the time I said it, it had come out, but it hadn't blown sky high like this. There's reports of another affair. Of course, his daughter Ivanka, his precious Ivanka, has gotten enormous amount of negative scrutiny. There's reports where he's trying to get her out of the government. His the Trump whisperer, his sweet little Hope Hicks, has resigned after testifying before the grand jury panel. I mean, all the women in his life, it all just blew up. There was also the scandal with his Rob Porter because of wife abuse, brought out all of the issues of Trump and his problems with women. After the eclipse over his Venus-Saturn, and then the 7th house transit, the 7th house solar eclipse, which again is his relationships. I made this clear prediction around the end of January. You can go back and watch the video. So he's very much nailed into these cycles, and now it's going to be an 8th house cycle for Trump starting on March 17th. 8th house has to do with enormous chaos. I'm just going to say, if you think it's been chaotic the last couple of weeks, hold on to your hat. Yes. 8th house has to do with destruction, transformation, war, sudden shocking things, which could mean sudden shocking revelations in the Mueller investigation. He could fire more people. Last year, it was in early April, is when Trump launched the attacks in Syria, of course, after this supposed chemical weapons. This is when he bombed Syria, and also when he dropped that MOAB, that mother of all bombs ordinance. That happened when we had the 8th house cycle last year. So the only time Trump has overtly used the military happened at the same time last year. Again, because 8th house, this is an 8th house transit from his ascendant. I said this in a recent video. You want to know how I use astrology and how I think you should use it? Is follow these solar lunar cycles all the time. This is how I do it. This is why I have a member site and been doing forecasts consistently for more than a decade. Because this really shows what's coming into our life each month and every couple weeks. So it's extremely dangerous right now with all these planets going through Trump's 8th house, particularly his 8th house cycle, and all the potential for chaos now. He's talked a lot about firing a lot of other people and basically floated a lot of ideas lately that he's really getting used to being president now and he doesn't need all of these handlers managing him and sort of containing him. And of course, that's basically what's been happening. The McMaster and the Kelly and the people have been kind of managing him so he doesn't fly off and do crazy stuff. And he's basically saying, okay, I don't need that anymore. I got this. Now I know what I'm doing. And so let's see what happens with the president and the potential for chaos in the next month. And so the other thing is, what makes it even more tricky and dangerous is Mars from Sagittarius will be aspecting the sun as it goes through Pisces. And of course also Mercury, Venus. So Mars in Sagittarius is also aspecting those planets in Pisces, making for even more of a potentially combustible situation. So there's a lot of potential danger in the world in this regard. For you personally, though, it's definitely all of this, mystical, metaphysical, transformational stuff. And honestly, with all of the heaviness in the world, we're tempted to just tune it out and be like, man, there's so much crazy stuff. I just can't face it. That's fine. You want to face yourself, though. You want to face the truth of who you are. You're of the world, or you're in the world, but not of the world. So connect with the truth of the other world. That power of Mars aspecting the sun also illuminates your inner light, your inner power, what's called Tejas Shakti, or the sacred fire that opens the Kundalini and that illuminates the higher facets of your consciousness. So we need to be present in the world. We need to stand for something. We need to speak out. We need to talk and call out the truth. As we live in the world, it's also our karma and our responsibility to do our best. But we also can't lose ourselves in the gains and losses, wins and the gains and losses of the world, and we can't become hateful at those who represent views that we don't agree with and all that as well. So Anyway, I hope this was helpful. Share it with others. And check out my member site if you want to see how this will influence you. Because again, it's going through Trump's 8th house. We've just seen how these lunar cycles affect him. They're affecting you the same way. They affect all of us. You're just not aware that these are the monthly cycles that you're going through. So if you want to do that, check it out. There's links in this video and on this page.